For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin today here in Venezuela, where Socialist Congressman Robert Serra was found dead last night in his home here in Caracas. As our correspondent Rachel Boothroyd reports, authorities have begun a murder investigation.
Last night, Venezuelan Minister of Domestic Affairs, Peace and Justice Miguel Rodriguez Torres confirmed the murder of Venezuelan lawmaker for the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, Robert Serra, who appears to have been killed last night at his home at around 10:30 p.m. alongside his partner. At 27 years of age, Serra was the youngest representative to have been elected to the country's National Assembly and was famed for his combative attitude. Last night, government officials called for calm amongst the Venezuelan people and said that they would conduct a special investigation in order to find his killers. Serra's murder has provoked an outpouring of grief across social media networks in the country. My name's Rachel Boothroyd, reporting for Telesur from Caracas, Venezuela.
Voters first elected Robert Serra to the Venezuelan General Assembly at the age of 25, making him the youngest congressman in Venezuelan history. He was a close ally of former President Hugo Chavez and current head of state Nicolas Maduro. Serra represented the municipality of Libertador in Caracas. And now to Brazil, where voters are preparing to head to the polls on Sunday. Presidential candidates are making last-ditch campaign stops to convince any remaining undecided voters. Latest polls put incumbent Dilma Rousseff of the Workers' Party firmly in the lead over Marina Silva and Aécio Neves. It remains unseen whether Rousseff will win outright in the first round with 50% or whether the race will advance to a second round. Polls show that Rousseff would prevail in a head-to-head with Silva in a second round. And for the latest on the race to be the next president of Brazil, we turn to our correspondent on the ground, Stephanie Kennedy. Hey, Stephanie.
Hello, good day here from Rio. We bring you this report from the centre of town. There's a little bit of drizzle today, but nothing too bad to dampen the spirits. Today we've been looking at social programmes promoted by the Workers' Party government. Now, the main idea of these programmes is to bring general basic services such as health, education and housing and bring them out to the communities, to the favelas, breaking with a history of marginalisation which has come to characterise not just Brazil but much of South America for the past century. And going back to electoral terms, we can see how appreciation of these public services are being reflected in the numbers for the electoral poll. The latest numbers released by Datafolha is giving Dilma Rousseff 39% with the lead, Marina Silva 25% and Aécio Neves with a dwindling 19%. That's all for now. Back to the studio. I'm Stephanie Kennedy in Rio.
And staying with Brazil, incumbent Dilma Rousseff has received good news in the final days before the election. New figures show Brazil's industrial production grew 0.7% from July to August of this year. That's better than expected and marks the nation's second jump in 5 consecutive months. Brazilian leaders also announced yesterday that their country has settled a decade-long dispute over cotton with the United States. According to the agreement, the U.S. will compensate Brazil $300 million for trade-distorting subsidies of cotton. In return, Brazil has agreed to drop litigation against the U.S. at the World Trade Organization. In Mexico today, many are remembering the Tlatelolco massacre of 1968. That's when 10 days before the Olympics in Mexico City, student protests ended in violence and some 300 people were killed by police and military. 46 years later, Mexican police are once again in the news for allegedly killing students. Volunteers and family in the state of Guerrero continue to search for the 43 students who disappeared last week after police shot at a bus of students who had been protesting military intervention in education. The students were later taken by an unidentified group who officials say may be linked to drug gangs in the country. Staying with Mexico and its ongoing fight against drug gangs, one of the country's most notorious kingpins, Hector Beltran Leyva, was arrested yesterday. Authorities apprehended Beltran Leyva in a seafood restaurant in central Mexico. He was accompanied by a U.S. citizen. Both men were carrying military-issued guns. Reports say the cartel boss had been posing as a businessman dealing in art and real estate. Victims of Colombia's 50 years of violence between FARC rebels and the government are in Havana, Cuba today to participate in ongoing peace talks. Many hope that during this round, the two sides will finally reach a permanent peace agreement. In Ecuador, the government has issued an apology to the Serrayuca indigenous group following a violation of oil concessions on the tribe's land. The Serrayuca tribe received $1.3 million in compensation from the government, but until now had not received a public apology. In Bolivia yesterday, with just 11 days to go before presidential elections there, current President Evo Morales inaugurated a solar park in the northern region of the country. The event was held as part of Morales' bid to make his country the energy center of South America. The new power station in the state of Pando is expected to save the Andean nation $1.8 million every year in gas subsidies. And in world news, at the United Nations today, Argentina assumes the rotating presidency over the Security Council. It comes as a new High Commissioner for Human Rights takes up his post. Prince Zayed Raad Al Hussein of Jordan takes up the position of UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. The first commissioner from the Muslim world and the world would-be king of Iraq may mark a change in direction for the UN. The Jerusalem Post writes that he may be less critical of Israel than former commissioners. And to Syria, where the U.S. continues to lead interventions against Islamic State group targets. After weeks of insurgent action along its border with Syria, Turkey has decided to also join the fight. Turkey had previously refused to join the coalition strike, saying that military intervention would not offer a permanent solution. Meanwhile, inside Syria, the people of the city of Homs continue protesting the deaths of 47 children after a suicide bomb attack yesterday. And finally, musician Ignacio Guido Montoyo Carlotto performed his first concert last night after discovering that he is the grandson of the renowned Argentine human rights activist Estiel Carlotto. Ignacio was kidnapped as a newborn by members of Argentina's then dictatorship. He first met his biological grandmother in August. His mother was one of the more than 30,000 Argentinians who disappeared during the regime of the 1970s and 80s. That's what we're covering today. Remember, you can follow all of our reports on Brazil's election through our special program, Brazil Decides, at telesurtv.net/English or through the hashtag Brazil Decides on Twitter and Facebook. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle. Have a great day.